I'm Marty, and we are doing this week's episode on Mission Possible on the Clubhouse, which is our community website where our Windows Live community members come together and tell stories and talk about using Windows Live. In order to talk about that story, the best possible person to tell our Clubhouse story is our community manager with Windows. So we have Marcus Schmidt here today.
Hey, Marty.
Nice to see you.
Good to be here.
Marcus is a member of the Windows social media team. So we're going to talk a little bit about first. Tell us about who we invite as members of the community. How do most of the community members find their way into the Clubhouse?
Yeah, initially we looked at existing communities that were out there around Windows Live, around Windows. So we invited folks from a program called the MVP program, the Most Valuable Professional Program. These are people that have already raised their hand and say, I'm passionate about Microsoft technology, I'm interested in what you're doing. So it was a natural place for them to then go to and start sharing their expertise, sharing their tips and their stories about how to use our products. But we also found that just by doing blog posts, basically posting on some of our popular Windows Live blogs, those are read by our passionate customers, and those are the folks that then said, hey, this looks like a good opportunity for me, and I'm going to go ahead and join.
So there's not any, there's no exclusivity to the club?
No, it's anyone can join. We basically look for people, though, that have a blog, that are interested in sharing their knowledge, sharing their expertise. But it's really not exclusive. You just have to go through a very simple application process, and away you go. So
if you were another brand out there thinking about recruiting community members to a program, what would you recommend for them to do? Where would they go find the people?
So the first place is use your own blog, right? Use your own place that people are coming to and reading today. The other thing is go out and do some research about the other places your community members might be, right? So if they're hanging out in other communities that aren't the one you're trying to build, go to these other places and try to find those folks and recruit in those other communities.
Which, of course, lends to the fact that you already have a blog set up.
Correct.
Which probably be another episode another day.
Yes, probably that would be earlier on in the process,
right.
Before building a big, broad community
You
of your
should have
customers.
blog.
At least having a blog, at least having some sort of presence within social media.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so what's interesting to me is I find people join for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
And you've been in the social media world for a while, so what do you think are some of the internal motivators for community members to join?
Well, I think there's always that you love to have special knowledge about something. So why does anybody join a community? For connection with other people that are interested in your same stuff. So whether the community is about Windows Live in this case, and you're really interested in digital memories or blogging, you feel more connected when you're with a group of people that share your interests. So I think that's definitely a motivating factor. There's also a certain amount of, you like to be an expert on something. Yeah. And, not everybody can be an expert like we see up on stage if you're a president or a newscaster. But you certainly have a certain amount of expertise that you like to share, and we get value from sharing that expertise with people that are like-minded to us. Yeah. So I actually think it's as simple as that, to be honest with you.
And I've actually seen that in some of the community members we have so far. We have folks that range from a guy that's in his 20s that works at a Target store in Pennsylvania all the way up to a grandmother in the UK. And that's really, I think, what they are most jazzed about when it comes to the community is not only sharing their own expertise, but also learning stuff from other people, right? So they pick up new ways of doing things and new approaches on how to use Windows Live in the way they basically incorporate it into their life. And so that not only sharing, but also receiving some of that information that they weren't necessarily getting before.
So tell me about some of the people. Let's talk about some of the
I'll talk to you about the 20-something guy at the Target. His online handle was Volvo-Shine, but his name is Ryan, and he works at this Target store in Pennsylvania. And his big expertise is all around Windows Live, Windows 7, and also Windows Vista. So he's done a lot of work across the entire spectrum of Windows products. Spends a lot of time basically building his own PCs, spends a lot of time on Twitter, very classic sort of technically enthused individual. And then we've got some people like Jamie Thompson, who's in the UK. He's an MVP, so we mentioned how we recruit from some of our existing MVP programs. Jamie is one of those guys that is very passionate about just Windows Live, doesn't really care as much about Windows 7 and Windows Vista, the operating system, but really cares about Windows Live quite a bit, and has a blog that he's been maintaining for a while. This just gave him a chance to get a broader audience for that blog. And some of his posts have actually been seen by millions upon millions of people after we put them onto our websites. And then we got folks like Vasudev, who's in India. He's also in the MVP program, and is also big into Windows Live, but does a lot of work with Windows 7 and Windows Vista too. And then I mentioned our 64-year-old grandmother, Technogran in the UK. She's great. She's super passionate about things like Windows Live Writer and Windows Live Photo Gallery, and her expertise is really those basic help and how-to articles for people just like her that haven't really used the products before.
Great.
So how do you see that the community work we're all doing fitting into our broader social media stuff that the team does? So community is one thing, community on our domains are one thing, but what about the way it fits into everything else?
So I think when the original plan was built out, I was pretty clear that I think we needed to have a place as Microsoft's voice, as well as what are we saying in the existing communities out there already, which are Facebook or any number of pick your favorite social networking site. So it's very important, in my opinion, to have something on your own domain, something that your brand owns. And the Windows Live community is something that we actively participate in. We bear the expense as far as FTE headcounts and the expense of keeping it going. And I think that for our brand, that was the right direction to take in conjunction with the third-party stuff. I think that it fits everything we do as we build out more marketing programs. We find ways to bring the community along. So a perfect example is we are releasing Windows 7 in different facets. We had the beta in January, and we'll have the RC next, and then obviously eventually will be the product. And so each step along the way, we're looking for a way to evolve that story and to tell people what's happening and have customers share their voice. So now that we have this community that's built up and existing, we go back to them as the product evolves through this launch, this very long launch, and say, what do you think in the latest build on the product? And we can share that voice across the microsites that we'll then build. So there will be a microsite built for the RC, which is the next version of the beta. And on that microsite, we'll have community voice, and we'll have stories from people that are already using the product. If we didn't have that community already set up, that infrastructure, we wouldn't be able to bring that voice along as the product evolves. So I think that it just becomes the continual telling of our story with our customers in everything we do in marketing now. We think about it across when we want to build a new website or we want to build a new campaign as we evolve the I'm a PC campaign. It always comes back to how can the community help us.
Gotcha.
For sure.
Gotcha.
Okay, so let's talk about what's next for the community.
Okay,
what's
so
going on?
Well, you mentioned the fact that we do have this minor release coming up
I did.
called Windows 7. So
I did.
That's a huge new thing for the community as we take us beyond Windows Live and Windows Vista and into Windows 7. The other thing we're looking at doing is how do we start to take the community, which has basically been people that have been sharing their stories and sharing their how-to tips, and integrate in other members of the community, or maybe give the community other opportunities to do things like just helping other customers, basically more of a customer support type of thing where customers are helping other customers, as well as feedback. So if you don't necessarily want to write your own blog post and you don't want to do help and how-to support of other customers, but you just want to tell Microsoft what's on your mind, give us some feedback on things we're doing, things that you'd like to see improved. How do we work that into the community as well? So ultimately giving people the ability to tell their stories, share their tips and tricks, support other customers if they want to do that, and then also give us feedback on what they'd like to see improved.
Cool. Looking forward to it, and that's coming out.
That's coming to all of that's rolling out over the next year, basically.
Perfect.
So
Okay, great. So we'll talk more about that as it evolves.
in future episodes of Mission
Possible. Perfect. Okay, so that's it for today. Talking about the Clubhouse and the community a little bit. Our next Mission Possible episode will be about Twitter, and I did a presentation at Microsoft talking about our Twitter strategy and our MS Windows Twitter account. So our next episode will be about Twitter. So we look forward to seeing you guys then. Thanks.
Thanks.